right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So this is just an hour-long session, um, really to touch on some of the most important elements, not of curriculum building, which is a whole different thing, but this is like, how do I wrap my head around the logistics of planning for a YTT? See, there she goes over there. Planning for a YTT, budget, faculty, and marketing, which I think are the three things that people are kind of make us the most nervous. So that's what we're gonna cover. We'll have like 5 minutes of just like intro and getting people to come on in. And then I'm gonna spend some time on budgeting and faculty and marketing in that order. And they all do feed into each other, as many of you know. And if you don't know, you'll see. So this is me. Hi, I know a lot of you. I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on a second. Get it together, Rachel. Haven't you run a webinar before? Share your screen with people. Goodness sakes. All right, hold on just a second. Here we go. All right, so is it visible for everybody? Can you see it all? Good. And just know sometimes when I'm watching a webinar and I don't feel like watching the little slides, you can also change your preferences and fix it so that you can see faces instead of the screen if you prefer. But anyway, so this is what we're going to do today. The stuff we're going to cover. We will have a Q&A at the end. I'm going to open the chat. So if there's questions as we go along, I am going to do my best to keep track of the chat as well. So if there is kind of like relevant stuff that comes up in the moment, then I do want to cover that as we go. But just know that if you have specific questions, I'm also going to hang out at the end. And so we'll be able to look at it more. All right, so let me pull this up. So that's me drinking coffee. My favorite thing, aside from running teacher trainings, is drinking coffee, dark roast, if you please. I will put my link here in the bio because I'm not really going to talk about myself. I don't really want to spend that much time doing it, but if you're interested in more about me, you can check it out. But just for the relevance of today, just so you know, if we haven't met before, I've helped run a couple of big national yoga studios. So that was YogaWorks when it existed in the States, and also Y Yoga in Vancouver, Canada, where I was also the director of teacher training and teacher development for about 8 years, which meant auditioning teachers, hiring teachers, mentoring teachers, in addition to developing their teacher training department. So I've been on the business side of this stuff in addition to the curriculum side. Also, I'm an instructional designer. So what I love to do is help everybody create awesome teacher training so we can get more people into yoga and doing that and spread the love and awareness and all the light and all the good stuff. Before we get started, I have a handout for you. Of course I do. So I'm going to put it in the chat as well. You could always get it later. Would somebody mind just going there, grabbing it, and giving me a thumbs up that you can get to it? I just want to thank you, Brittany. I just want to make sure everybody can get the goods. All right. Now, real quick, I want to hear from you. So I created a poll, which was exciting. And so as you're getting the handouts and stuff like that, if you would maybe take a moment to answer those questions. I just love to hear where everybody's from, some of the things that are concerning you, where you're at in the process of developing your teacher training, just so I can get to know everybody a little bit. And I'll tell you, I'm in Colorado right now. I used to live in Vancouver, Canada, though. I lived there for 15 years. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rachel. Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm so glad to be here. This is amazing. You said something about handouts. I was revamping my Zoom here and I missed that. I'm just filling out right now your little poll, but is there like a handout I need to get or something like that?
My dear, I put it in the chat. So just click on that link
sweet,
in the chat,
my
dear. And you will grab it.
Oh, you're so organized as per usual. I know this woman is a genius. I was witness to it all. That's why I'm here.
Testify later.
Okay, good. I will.
All right. Okay, so we have some Europeans, we got some Canadians, some United Statesies, gleam in my eye, just getting started in the thick of it. I have a YTT already. All right, so we got like a whole bunch of different folks. So some of you are really just at the beginning of the process. Some of you have done it and just kind of want to make it even better. Yeah, and I'm just looking at the concerns because I think that this is super key. It's like, what makes us nervous? Breaking even, yep, for sure. Marketing, making sure it's excellent for the students, yes. Okay, great, awesome. Oh, all right. Can you guys, I'm gonna, we're all pretty good. I'm gonna end the poll. I think you guys can check out the results, but we have, it's like a really nice demographic. Sounds good. And also what I'd love to know from you, any burning questions, throw them in the chat. If you have a burning question you want to get answered today, throw it into the chat stream. I just want to make sure, and you know, that we kind of hit the stuff that's really on your mind. And yeah, and Coco, just also, and for anyone who just came in, we are going to have a Q&A at the end so we can get super specific.
Okay.
But yeah, for sure. But for, as we go through, just as a protocol, probably what we ask questions in the chat. If it's relevant to exactly what we're talking about, I'll cover it. I'll keep my eye on the chat here. So as we go, if you have stuff, put it in. If I don't capture it, then we will have a Q&A at the end where we can get specific question answers, because I know everybody's situation is a little bit different. All right, yes, and registering with Yoga Alliance. Yeah, for sure. We can hit that at the end. I'm not covering that in this webinar, but I can absolutely speak to that and let you guys know where things are at. All right, yes, good questions, Ronnie. Keep putting those on in there. I'll scroll back. I'll jump us on in and I will scroll back and look at those questions as we go along. And yay, happy to be here with all of you. I got so excited about this. I was like, all right, because I haven't done this webinar before. So I'm going to cram a bunch of information in there. So just know that it's recorded for you guys so you can have access to it later and things like that. All right, so the most important thing about your YTT, in my opinion, is knowing that a yoga teacher training is an amazing, amazing opportunity to extend your brand, your vision, your mission into the world. So it really comes from this heartful place. Yes, it's going to help you build your business, but the teacher training should be an extension of either what you do as a studio or what you do as a teacher. It's a wonderful opportunity to build community, to get into these deeper relationships with your students. It elevates your students. It connects them to the yoga lineage. It elevates your faculty too. When faculty have to step up to the plate and go from being a teacher to being a teacher trainer, there is a big growth curve that happens there that's really, really valuable. It creates work opportunities. Even if as a studio, you don't make the most amount of money, you just gave people a really valuable work opportunity where they earned a lot of revenue. Like that's invaluable. That really helps to support your people. It helps you build your vision. It can generate, and obviously at the end of the day, it generates revenue because it's one of the things that we have as yoga studios and yoga teachers that has a high price point, because a lot of other stuff, it has to be very reasonably priced for people to be able to come. And this is one of those places where we have a high ticket item. So just practically, that's the case. I want to go ahead and jump on into the budget right away. Now, here, some of you already know how to do this. So, you know, I know this will be old hat for some of you, but some of you don't. And this can be just kind of allay some fears about it. I also do have to caveat to you, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer. Okay, so if you need like professional legal advice, please go to those professionals. This is just based on what I have experienced. So one of the scariest parts of a teacher training, as we've seen in the poll as well, is like, hey, will I make enough money to make things run? And creating a 200-hour teacher training is a big investment. Even if you're, you know, not buying materials from someone else, like me, you're putting a ton of time into building this. It's a huge investment of your time and resources. So you want to know, is it going to like, how is it going to work out? But if you do a little legwork with this budget in advance, you can really get a very clear idea of time in, time out, and whether or not you're going to break even. Okay, so let's first talk about pricing. And if you have the handouts, you can follow along. You know what, I'm going to post the handout one more time if anybody came in late, just because it really is easier to follow along with it if you've got it. So there you go. All right, so you guys, for your pricing, we're going to look at revenue first. So when we're thinking about a budget, we think, how much am I making and then how much am I spending? It's just really, really simple. So revenue is going to be based on how much you charge, of course, right? So in my experience, most teacher trainings price out between $3,000 and like $3,500, something like that. Okay. But you need to investigate what's going on in your market. If you're in New York City, that's going to be different than a rural area in Kentucky. It's just going to be able to bear different things. You also need to consider your demographic. What can they afford, right? What feels reasonable to them? You can also, that gets into payment plans, which we can talk about later. Here's a question that comes up. Should you charge less for an online program? My answer is no, not if you've done it well. An online program takes actually more work to create than an in-person program when you do it properly. So don't discount those prices. Also, as you're looking, it's not necessarily the best thing to be the cheapest thing around. It's not like we're trying to undercut everyone else's prices, like a little marketing thing. Sometimes people look at a higher price and they think it's better. So those are just things to keep in mind. And there are ways you can adapt for your community and be inclusive and create opportunities without devaluing your teacher training. So I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but in my opinion, you don't offer the cheapest price. You say, hey, this is the price, this is the quality, and we have options, work study things, scholarships. We have ways to work around it, or payment plans to make it manageable for people, but really setting yourself as a high quality offering. And that's important. Okay, so let's just be really practical. You're likely going to run early birds, and yes, we'll talk about early birds when we get to marketing. And so for this budget that I'm going to throw at you, this little fake little sample budget, we're going to look at the worst case scenario. We're going to look at everybody bought your early bird and no one bought last minute. Everyone bought your cheapest price. You know what I mean? So that's what we're going to look at. So I'm just going to say, like, okay, for your early bird, if you're somewhere between $3,000 and $3,500, say your early bird is $2,600. So that's just a number I took. This doesn't have to be your number. It's just an example. So if we do that, then we calculate it out. If you like Google Sheets or Excel, they are your friend for this, but just calculate it out simply how much you would earn. So 6 students, that's 15,600. For 20 students, it's 52,000. So you guys can see from these numbers, there's going to be a sweet tipping point, right? There's a place up to which you earn no money, and then all of a sudden, each additional student gives you $3,000 of profit, right? So that's where we we need to find out what that number is. So everybody put what you think your YTT expenses are in the chat. Just go ahead, throw an expense out there. What do we have to think about as we're making our budget? Yeah, exactly, Coco, advertising. Yes, Brittany, that is it. Your faculty, they are going to be your highest expense. Grace, awesome, printing the manual. Coco, yep, space rental. Yep, Christine, exactly, space rental if you don't have your own studio. Ronnie, good, books. That's something you might put that burden on your students, or you might not. That's one I hadn't thought of. Anything else? Yes. Okay, yeah, yoga lines cost. Your first year out, that's going to be like $640, right? And then it renews at like $240 a year, right? Because when you have to apply, I think it's a $400 application fee right now. Okay, these are great. And so, yes, faculty, space rental, printing your manuals, marketing, registration with Yoga Alliance, processing fees. Yeah, Brittany, I think it might be that for your first year. So it's first year dues wrapped up with a registration fee, but it might have changed. I might be wrong. Processing fees, 3%, everybody, plus like 30 cents a transaction, right? That adds up. Yes, Coco, great. First cost, right? You want to buy a Mr. Bonesy skeleton. You want to buy a projector. You need to buy a poster board and all of your little whiteboard pens. Those are like capital startup costs, right? We want to think about. Yeah, awesome, you guys. That's a great list. So, okay, let's talk about our faculty and what you pay them. What do you pay faculty? What do you do? And this is going to get a little bit into a conversation we're going to have later about faculty. But for now, I'm going to assume that you are paying faculty by the hour. Okay, there are ways to do revenue shares and things like that, which we can talk about. But my preference, and you'll hear about this later, for a studio is that you're paying your faculty an hourly fee, because you can project that, and probably you're doing a lot of the marketing and they're not. And so the amount of students in there is more about what you're doing than what they're doing, probably. So, so let's assume you're paying them by the hour. So generally speaking, faculty should earn more for TT than they do for the group classes. They are required to have a higher caliber of skill to do this. They have to hold space in a different way. And they have to do a lot more prep work too, to do YTT than they do to do a group class. So those are some considerations. So generally, these are your more senior teachers. Now, faculty rates can vary wildly depending on the demographic and also depending on some other things like, are they bringing in the curriculum or are they teaching your curriculum? If they're creating the curriculum, that's usually, you're going to pay them more as that expert than if they're teaching your curriculum that you are providing for them. So there are some variables in here for sure. I'm going to give you a super rough ballpark of anywhere between 40 to 100, maybe 110 an hour. Your experienced teachers, you want it, if ideally, if you could pay them 100 an hour, because your faculty is your training. They are going to make or break this for the students. The way they hold space, the way they're available, also their excitement about it, and hopefully their marketing of it and their presence. So if you have someone who's quite experienced, they're going to be at that higher end. So, but if they're assisting or they're kind of baby yoga teachers, then it'll be less. They might even apprentice for free to have the privilege of teaching the training later. All good, Ronnie, thank you. So for our budget, we're just going to say that it costs, like you're paying them 70 an hour, and that's 70 times 200, okay? Because we need 200 classroom hours in Yoga Alliance unless you're still on the old standards. And you're going to have to elevate to the new standards next year anyway, so 200 hours. So that's what I'm going to count it as. I'm also assuming that you're not double paying your teachers, that you have one, that they're capable enough that you have one faculty in there at a time. Hey, if you have more than 20 students, have 2 teachers the whole time. But at the beginning, it's going to be more reasonable to have one faculty there. Okay, space rental, again, varies wildly. And this is presuming that either you don't own your own studio to run it in there and work around classes, and so you have to rent a studio, or you actually want to figure your studio is worth something, so you're actually like, well, I'm going to pay myself to rent my own studio from myself. So I assumed $50 an hour for 200 hours, right? So that's $10,000. Yeah, that's kind of a hefty expense, right? All right, printing the student manuals. This would probably be about $50 a student if you're printing out like a 500 to 600 page manual, which is what mine is. Marketing. Now, marketing, we're going to talk about that. There's lots of ways. You guys, you do not have to pay for marketing right off the starting gate. There might be times where you boost your post strategically and do things, but I think you can get so much done for free. That said, printing costs for posters or cards or things like that, boosting some posts and social media stuff, I'm just going to say $500. I know you could go crazy with marketing, but I'm personally more a fan of the grassroots kind of organic marketing strategies than like trying to buy all the Google ads in the world, right? So we'll talk more about that later. Here's other possible expenses like a skeleton, like a Mr. Bones, okay? You don't necessarily have to have these, but they are nice to have. A projector, depending on your teacher training, is going to be super useful. So I'm not including these capital expenses in your budget. Other things you might need to include are, hey, insurance, utilities at your studio, admin time. Now, we usually put that in for free, don't we? We're like, I'll register them and take their money. I'll manage the faculty schedules. But that is an investment of your time that's good to be aware of. And retreats would have special concerns like travel and things like that, which is a little too much for us to cover here. But those are some other things just to keep in mind. I'm not covering those extra costs in our budget. I'm keeping it pretty straightforward with your brass tacks. So what we have in here is your faculty costs. So we're assuming $7,000 or $14,000, which I think is reasonable. Room rental. If you have a $50 room rental, might be cheaper. Yoga Alliance registration, printing of manuals, processing fees. Oh, they're so sneaky. And marketing. So you'll notice when we have this, it's very simple math. All we do is subtract the expenses from our revenue until we hit break even point. So with this kind of expenses, with this going on, you break even at 11. Now that's when the studio starts to earn money. Now, you might be the faculty member. Okay, so you are paying yourself $70 an hour. So there's that. Okay, but the studio as a business wouldn't make money until you hit 11 students. And then you start building a lot. So a couple students can make a really big difference in a yoga teacher training. Skeletons, oh my gosh, they vary. I think you could get a real cheap one for maybe $400, $300, something like that. Real nice ones will be $1,000. You don't have to get a really nice one. Just get like a straight ahead skeleton. But I will tell you though, actually, that If you get a good skeleton, it'll last you a long time. And if you get a crappy skeleton, it will fall apart really fast. So you may be ahead to just suck it up and get a really nice one, because they really are so helpful in the anatomy. I just saw the little kitty run across the back. Look, I'm not sure what she's got. She's carrying something. Okay, sorry. Time to focus. All right. So now this is kind of a worst case scenario in a way, because you're paying everyone else for faculty and you're also renting a space. So let's look at another model where you don't have to rent a space, and you don't print out the student manuals. Instead, you give them a PDF. Ooh, we are in the world where you could give them a PDF, and the student could decide whether they want to use their iPad, or if they want to bind it and print it out, great, they can do that, but it's on them, right? So that's a way that you could save some money. And I don't feel like there's any real drop in quality there, simply because so many people prefer to work on their personal devices these days. So, or you print out part of it, right? Oh my gosh. Okay. So with this, you'll notice it's really quite different. That room rental made a huge, huge difference. So now the studio is breaking even at really 6 students and starting to make money. And again, this is keeping in mind that you're not one of the faculty members. We are assuming someone is faculty being paid the whole time. So at least this gives you, whoopsies, sorry guys. So at least this gives you kind of a rough idea. Now, I'm not including your capital startup costs. You guys, you've just put in a major amount of investment, creating your teacher training, hundreds of hours to create it, honestly. You've put in a lot of time and effort, you've done the registration things and all that. But it's like, I kind of didn't include that because once you do that, it's sort of done, right? And then after that, you have something which is of such value that you could run 2 times a year, maybe 3, probably 2, sometimes 1, but that's going to be this kind of revenue. It's an investment you make and amortize that initial expense over running it for 10 years. And just the value that you create for your community in doing that is pretty extensive. So hopefully that gives us kind of like a initial foray. Any questions about budget before we move on to faculty stuff? Yeah, no, that's a good question. So scheduling, actually, let's cover that, Brittany, when we talk about marketing. Hit me up, because actually your schedule is marketing, because how you make your schedule is part of your marketing plan. So great question, and let's hold that thought. All right, I'm going to pop onto faculty. Again, if there's questions about budgeting stuff, we can circle back. Okay, avenues of collaboration. So inviting teachers, faculty is great. So you're not just a one-person show, but there are a couple different ways you can choose to collaborate with faculty. So one of the great things about faculty is that you get to offset some of the burden of either creating the program or running the program. You get to bring in different voices, different students resonate with different faculty. So it's actually a marketing tool where you have students who resonate with different people, come in because they want to study more with that particular person. You can offer different points of view in your training within reason. I will say your teaching methodology should be super consistent for all of your students, which means that your faculty have to be connected and consistent in their language. That's going to be a big key point. And my widen your marketing funnel. If you have, 3 faculty members rather than 1, you have 3 people who are going to be able to draw others, right? The cons, the sad cons. Okay, I'd say the first one is going to be that your faculty don't necessarily align with a teaching methodology that's consistent for your students. So if you have 3 different faculty members who teach sequencing 3 different ways, that's not going to work. You have to have faculty who are, being a faculty is different than being an awesome teacher. It requires different skills. And one of the things that is required is that they are collaborative, they are a team player, they are willing to play nice with others, they're willing to adjust some of their methodology and how they do things to create a consistent training experience and language for your students. You want all your faculty to be speaking the same language, right? And not contradicting each other, right? I would never sequence those 2 things together. That is such a weird idea. I don't know why she did that. We don't need that. We need everybody to be together and sharing the same story. Another thing is their schedule might be a pain in the ass, like they might be out of town a lot or running away on retreat. Here's an important thing. Depending on the level of collaboration you choose for your faculty, if they're presenting their own material, you don't own it. So say you're like, I want to bring in a physio to teach the anatomy portion of my YTT. They bring in all their own handouts, all their own material. That is not yours, right? So if they're out of town, you don't have that material. I am a fan for the safety of your business of you owning all the curriculum that you teach and that your faculty teaches, so that way you have resilience and depth in your fact. You might love this person to teach it, but oh no, they're going to Bali for 2 months. You have resources and somebody else can come in and teach that curriculum in a skillful way and create a consistent experience for your students. I think that's safer for us. Yes. Yeah. So those are some of the cons. So the bottom line here for me is that I want you to own all your content. Exceptions, there are exceptions to that. An exception would be you have an amazing teacher who does Ayurveda locally, and they're going to come in and they're going to do a 2-hour workshop on it. But that's okay, because those 2 hours you could also have taught a different way, or you have the resources to fill those 2 hours on Ayurveda in a different way if they're out of town. But they're an amazing resource, and they're coming in and they're doing a little piece that is not your whole training program, that is specialized. You have a teacher who loves the chakras and wants to come in and do 2 hours on that. Those kind of things are fine for someone else to bring in their own curriculum. But if we're talking about sequencing, cueing, teaching, even anatomy, honestly, just because it's got to be 30 hours of your training, my preference for you guys is that you own all that content. Even if the teachers teach it a little differently, that you have that as a foundation. And also, I'm a fan of teachers, but you want to be aware of having too many cooks in your kitchen. Again, ultimately, it's about the student experience, and we want the lessons that are being taught to be super consistent. All right, here's some other considerations for your faculty. Can they hold emotional space for students who lose their shit? You know how teacher training is. It is a personal journey. You get into philosophy, you question why you're here, you run up against your own challenge in public speaking and feel very self-conscious and vulnerable. You need someone who has a lot of emotional intelligence, who can hold space in a compassionate way for all of that experience. That might not be the same thing as your flashiest, most awesome, most popular teacher. It's a different bit of skill set. Maybe that's the same, that's great, but I just want you to be on the lookout, because sometimes it's tempting for us to want the faculty who get the most students in their classes. That's awesome, but I also want you to consider that teacher holistically as part of your team, and can they support the student experience? What is your faculty balance? It's kind of nice to have faculty who balance each other, not just in, say, their expertise, like, oh, Maria loves sequencing and Tom loves anatomy, but you also want to think about their temperaments. Is someone like that, kind of analytical, scientific personality? And then is there someone else who can be a mama bear and hug people if they're having a bad day? So just, ideally, we think about trying to create a well-rounded faculty that people can relate to. Will they market and advocate the training for you, right? Or do they just promote their own stuff? Will they be a team player and come together for a consistent training vision? You want someone who's really going to be part of a team and not just a solo flyer. Do they have a following and connection to the community? Pragmatically speaking, you might want them to, have classes that have students in them that they will speak to. And are they registered with Yoga Alliance or your registration body, wherever you happen to be? So Yoga Alliance is going to uphold their requirement that all teachers are ERYT 500 as of the end of this year. So everybody get on the ERYT 500 train, and we can talk about that more. So that's kind of the shades of faculty. Are there any specific questions about faculty that you guys wanted me to cover? And I'm going to just scroll up and look at those questions you posted earlier too. Oh yeah, Carrie, I think this is probably similar to creating a dance teacher training. I would say the same requirements are there. All right. Uh-huh. Yes. Okay. So, Coco, that's a good question. That's more of a, yeah. So there's different ways. Let me cover this real quick. So there are different ways you can partner with faculty, right? So you could collaborate with faculty where you co-create a training, your business partners together. Now, that means both of you share the copyright, or the business owns the copyright for that, right? So the reason why, and that could be good if you have someone who shares your vision, but you're in bed with them. If you guys want to get out of that, someone's going to have to buy the other person out. That's one thing to keep in mind. If you are a solo teacher who owns your own curriculum, you own a training, you could partner with a studio. That's going to be more of a relationship of a revenue share. Generally speaking, you'll do something like 60-40, 70-30 split, where you as the trainer get more because you're bringing all the curriculum and everything in. So studios out there, if you're thinking of hiring someone and bringing them in to teach their curriculum at your studio, you're like, this is a no-brainer. She's got a teacher training. I'll just hire her to bring it in. I want you to be aware of a couple things. One, it's not under your school. Two, you don't own the curriculum. Three, it's not your vision, brand, and values. Okay. So my preference for you is that you have your own teacher training that's yours in-house. However, that could be a great way if you want to get started right away, or if you feel like, wow, I don't have the time, the resources, or to put this together, I can do that. Or if you're a single trainer like Coco is, and she's got this kick-ass training and she's a kick-ass trainer, so you could go to studios who really aren't up for the extra task of doing all of that. And she could have a revenue share with them where they take care of the space and the marketing and getting the students, and she takes care of everything else. And that's going to be a revenue share after expenses. Okay. And Coco, we can talk more about that specifically for sure. And yes, you have contracts. Oh, yes. I did want to mention contracts. Yes, I think this is in your handout. Create a contract with your faculty. Okay. And there, I think I have a list in your handouts of all the things that I think you should include. And I also put a link there to a company called Conscious Counsel, who some of you might know, he's in Vancouver. I think he's a good resource. I'm not advocating him particular. I think it's just a place to start because he's somebody working specifically for legal stuff in the yoga field. So you can check that out if you wish. I also have access to a free course he's done. If you want access to that, hit me up. It's not free, but I have a free discount code. So if anyone's interested in that legal stuff, you let me know and I'll hook you up with him. But contracts, you just want it to be super clear. And the things that you need in your faculty contract are, obviously you need pay rate. You need a description of what they're obligated for. Do they have to lock up and close the studio? Are they required to clean up? What are their actual duties? Are you paying them for prep time? My suggestion is no. Their pay rate is high enough that prep time should be included. And again, that's like their investment, right? They're really going to have to invest the first time they do it. And then years after that, it's smooth sailing. So I don't usually pay trainers for prep time because that's going to be different for every person anyways. You also want to include deadlines, and this has to do with your marketing. So you need to have a go deadline where you're like, the training is running, we're in, and you need to have a deadline where if we don't have those 11 students we need, we reevaluate, we can cancel, because until you cancel the training, those faculty need to hold all that time. That's 200 hours of their life that they're holding for you. So we have to have a specific date that we all agree upon whereon we decide if the training is running. And also privacy issues, they're going to have access to your IP. So this is another reason why I want you to own your curriculum. It's your IP. If someone else writes it, it's their copyright, unless you hire them to do it. If you write it, it's yours. That's important, right? So I think that it's useful to have something in there about like the manual and all the lesson plans are the intellectual property of the student, and the trainer is allowed to use it for the purpose of this educational thing, but it stays with us. It's not to be taken outside of the studio for any other purpose. You just want to cover your bases. And in the contracts, you put all of those things that no one likes to talk about, but you kind of want to talk about and make sure they know. So make it explicit in your contract. Also, privacy of students, like they're going to have access to maybe seeing student profiles or financials or things like that, you just want to make sure that you kind of cover professional standards. Also, grounds for dismissal. Now, you might want to include something like that in there, like we expect. Could be something as easy as, we expect you to uphold the standards as per your registration body. An easy one would be Yoga Alliance. They're very clear on their ethics and their scope of practice. And so you're pretty much covered if the teacher's agreeing to something like that. It covers you in case something happens that you need to investigate. Good question. Yes. All right. Marketing, what many of you are here for. All right. Now, some of this might be super obvious to you guys, but hopefully there's a little something in here that maybe you just haven't thought of. So the first thing about marketing is that it must be aligned with your vision, mission, and values. That is the most important thing before we start thinking about Google AdWords and campaigns and things like that. You have to have a training that aligns with what your mission is. Like, what do you care about? What are the teachers that you want to create? Who is your ideal student for this training? Who would you hire, and what skills do you need to see demonstrated in the training in order to hire your graduates? That's what we want. Your training should be a place where you find your new teachers, right? This is what we're trying to do, is create depth in the community. I'm throwing another handout into the chat. It's called your USP. You guys probably, your unique selling proposition. Oh, right, it's very businessy. But basically, that's just a worksheet. You guys can find them anywhere online. I'm just putting it there as a resource. If you haven't happened to think about that kind of stuff, it's good to do it every year because you're going to grow. Your voice is going to grow as a studio. And so you want to sort of, and a teacher, and you want to think about this offering, I think. And when you're marketing, I think it's very useful for you to think about, okay, well, given my mission and values and what I want, like given those keywords, like what are the marketing keywords I would use? Like thinking about things like, inclusion, right? Or, supportive or elevating or instructional. So from your mission, come up with the words that describe that for your students in a visceral way, so that when they are, looking at your social media and things like that, that you're consistent in your messaging about what they're going to get. Someone who is offering like a comprehensive, extensive, rigorous training is different than, dive into your passion and love for the history and philosophy of the yoga, right? They're going to create two different experiences. So you want the way you're messaging your training to match the experience that you're going to create. Okay, I know that's kind of like a no-brainer, but sometimes no-brainers are worth saying. Okay, so some pragmatic stuff for your teacher training. Get your community involved. This is a great way to market without marketing. Do polls. Say, hey, who's interested in a teacher training? What are the things you're most interested about in the practice? What schedule would work for you? So get information from your students about what they want, because that might give you some strange ahas. If they're all like, you think you're going to do like a rigorous vinyasa training and they're all interested in chair yoga and modifications, well, that's good to know. So also this feeds into your schedule. So talking about, kind of your schedule is actually part of your marketing because it needs to match your demographic. If you have people who all work on their own and can be super flexible, maybe you run Monday, Wednesday, Friday trainings. If everybody's working Monday through Friday, you run weekend trainings. If they're all students or retirees, you run a summer intensive. Anyway, so there's lots of different ways to approach that, but your schedule should be part of what appeals to your community and get them involved early. Why not? Also, and this is kind of a no-brainer, but make sure your marketing is friendly to people who just want to do it for fun. And you might even have two tracks where one version is for fun and not for certification, and they don't have to do some of the teaching stuff, and one version is for certification. The only caveat I have around that, and the reason I'm cautious about that, is because students will get halfway in and they'll be like, oh, I actually can teach, They start to realize that, oh, I'm learning how not to be scared. Oh, wow, I really want to share this. And if they haven't done all the work, you know what I mean? So while I think it's a nice idea, if you're going to do a community track and a professional track, like a certification track, I would make them quite different, make the community track a lot simpler. So if they really do want to flip over, they have to kind of do the whole thing. That's my preference, just because I think it's hard to change midstream. All right. Here's the thing about that we can now consider is online stuff. You will be able to, according to Yoga Alliance, at least for those of you in this demographic, you can do the whole thing online. and a lot of it can be not synchronous, which means you're not in real time. It's wild. But so you might want to think about, hey, if I have to rent a studio and that's costing me money, and pay faculty and that's costing me money, maybe I could put 40 hours of my training online and have that as a valued resource. There are certain subjects that are really good for online where students want to revisit the material or re-understand it or take it a little bit more slowly. Good question, Brittany, and I will answer that. And so some content is actually better online. I'm thinking some sequencing stuff, some philosophy stuff, some portions of the anatomy stuff before it's applied. That stuff can be great online, and even better than in person. And then there's some stuff that just is better Zoom synchronous or in person, personalized feedback, just-in-time responses to their practice teaching, applied anatomy, hands-on assist, obviously verbal assist, those things we need to be in person, giving students feedback on their practice, etc. So in terms of creating content, I want to make a distinction for you between, because we think online, it kind of becomes muddy. There's a difference between synchronous meaning time, which means same time. That's like this, we're doing this on Zoom, it's the same time. And asynchronous, which is pre-recorded. In my opinion, if you're doing pre-recorded materials, that's a whole thing, and we should talk. You can either just have videos that are supporting the training experience, in which case they don't need a framework that they're embedded in, or you're like they're doing their ethics course online or they're part of their anatomy course online, in which case it actually needs to be properly structured as an online course. And that's a whole thing. That's a great thing, but it's a big thing. It's a big investment, but it's also awesome once you have it done because it's a real full learning experience with assessments and everything else. So if you're doing asynchronous, pre-recorded, whether it's just support materials or a full course, I will suggest you make the video quality really nice. Don't just record your Zoom sessions unless it's all about the interaction, because it's like that's going to be a library archive. It's a little bit like making a really nice pre-recorded class versus capturing your Zoom session. In my opinion, if you're going to make something for posterity, just get out your iPhone, wear a mic, put up some lights, make it nice. Like make it something that you're proud of to have in your ongoing library. My 2 cents. All right. Yeah. So Brittany, just shortly, I wouldn't use Zoom. I would use my iPhone. Just iPhones are great. Early bird. Hey, there's the early bird. There he is. Yes, do an early bird, you guys. People, then you know what your numbers are in advance. Make it a good deal. Market your training 6 months in advance and get your early bird going, your early bird going right at that time. I think early birds are an excellent way to do it. You just got to cut through the noise of people's lives. And the way to do that is a deadline. Deadlines cut through the noise and get people to commit. It's that simple. Payment plans, yes, but make them pay in advance. Okay. They have to be paid up by the time the training starts. Worst thing in the world is to have a bunch of people paying and then drop out and then your budget goes to hell, right? So pay in advance. Non-refundable registration fees, yes. And I'd say like maybe $200, something that's accessible, but isn't so little, like $50. They're like, $200, they think about it, right? Because what we're doing is we're getting people to act on and stay committed to their best instincts. I happen to think it's a great instinct to want to take yoga teacher training. So let's support people to follow through on their commitment to themselves. So 6-month ramp up for marketing. I think I prefer work study to scholarships because I like the idea of people kind of participating. And again, I like there being a value to your training that is set, that you're not just sort of giving it away. But of course, that depends on your demographic and your community, and you might have a good reason for running a scholarship. So a sample pricing for your early bird is like 6 months out, like from the time you launch it to maybe 3 months in, it's $2,600. Wow, what a deal. Then after that, you raise it to $250. And then after 2 months out or 6 weeks out, I think is a good time to finish your first early bird. So anyone who registers within 6 months, they have to pay, 6 weeks of the start date, they're paying full price. So because 6 weeks out, I think is usually a pretty good, people can commit to that. It's not too far away, right? So yes, on the early birds. Okay, marketing. So this goes into my feeling about organic marketing and using what you've got. brainstorm, you guys, and see like, what do I have at my fingertips that I can use? So before you run off and pay for it, think, hey, physical posting, yay, posters. If you have a brick and mortar, do that. Have little cards people can take away. Put QR codes on everything. You know what a QR code is? I put one in the handout. There's free QR code generators online. Do it so people can lift up their phone, scan it, and register. Make it super easy. Reduce the barriers so they don't have to go to your site, find the teacher training, find the registration page, one link, right? Make it easy, again, for them to act on that elevating impulse. Okay, these are just obvious ones. Put it on your website, front and center. Put it in your newsletter. You're going to have to announce it more than you think you should. People do not hear you the first time or the first 5 times. Social media these days, you have to put a message out there like 7 times before people go, oh, there's a teacher training, right? People will just miss it. So be repetitive and be consistent. Social media, a little bit more on that later. Address common fears. So think about your students. You guys, you wouldn't believe the things I've heard, like, I'm too old to do a yoga teacher training. I can't do fancy yoga poses. I haven't been practicing long enough. I've got an injury. I'm pregnant. Can I do yoga, like a yoga teacher training? So think about what your students are thinking about, and then and then proactively, either on social media or through the way you talk about it or through a Q&A on your website, you can address those fears. How much yoga practice do I need to have? And then you have like a paragraph where you say, hey, actually, this is a great way to really get a good foundation for your practice. So think about those things and address them in advance. Otherwise, they just stay in students' heads as some sort of resistance. But if you can articulate it and address it proactively, then they go, oh, maybe I could be there too, right? Which is what we want, because it's for everybody. All right. Referral programs. You might have like a sister studio that doesn't have a studio yet, or your faculty. You might incentivize your faculty to put a link on their website so that if someone signs up via their personal link, that the faculty maybe gets like a $50 kickback or $100 kickback for every student. If you do that, put it in your budget, right? But those are ways. And yeah, does that mean that faculty might be competing to have students sign up via their link? Maybe, if you're lucky, but I think of worse things to have happen. I'll get to that. Pro programs, free posting site. Oh yeah, and you guys know, take advantage of all the free posting sites. Again, you know this, but just make time to do it. It's kind of making time to do the thing. Put it on Alignable, put it on LinkedIn, put it on all of those free, yoga community pages on Facebook, at least the ones that tell you that you're allowed to post things like that, right? And get people to post for you. You could do like some sort of giveaway for a discount that might be fun and incentivizing and get some buzz around it. So there's lots of ways to create noise in your community. I've never had students apply. We used to have students apply for training, and I don't really now. A 300-hour, I would have students apply. I would do an interview process for a 300-hour, but a 200-hour, honestly, my doors are pretty wide open for that. But again, you might change it. Maybe it makes it seem more like, they have to apply. Social media. Okay, let's talk about social media. Social media should be to connect rather than to sell. Okay, this is where you connect with people and give them value, not sell to them. Yes, you will sell to them occasionally, but you want to sell through giving them valuable things. So use your social media to address those common fears. Get your faculty doing like little 1-minute blurbs on common questions about the teacher training. Get your faculty to do like a 1-minute little, oh, hey, did you ever think about the foundation of your hands? Here's a quick tip for you guys when you're doing blah, 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 this. If you like this, you can learn more about it in our teacher training. So give something valuable and then click on it as like, hey, this is our teacher training. If you use Linktree or something like that for your social media, stick the yoga teacher training registration in that tree. Make it part of your bio. Again, make it super easy for people to go from I'm interested to I'm signing up, right? Profile your faculty, share their personal stories. Yoga training isn't just about our minds, it's also about our hearts. So speak to people. Once you have graduates, you can profile your graduates and what they're doing now, what they experienced from the training and got out of it. And remember, you're going to have to post more than you think to get people's attention. Show, don't tell. I will say at some point, it's a good idea to invest in a good photographer. Social media is really, really visual. So you might do a little photo shoot. I have to say, when I've done photo shoots, even though I'm sometimes like, oh God, like it's like that much money, I'm super happy. You can use those photos a long time. Get lots of photos, lots of candids, as well as posed photos, happy photos. And again, use that to think about your mission. What's the experience of teacher training you want to create? And then capture that. Work with your photographer. They're probably an artist and can help you get that kind of warmth that you want. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Social media is one place where I might say you do need to pay to play, because, and again, nothing crazy, little boosts locally. You're going to focus your marketing efforts local to your studio. Unless you're doing all online, that's who you just need to focus on. You don't need to compete nationally or internationally. You're just in your town, right? And maybe the surrounding places. So social media, I would say boost the posts that give value to your people, not the posts that are selling your teacher training. Does that make sense? So when you like boost the posts where you're sharing something of value and you might mention, oh yeah, this is part of our teacher training. Don't share the post where you're like, teacher training, early bird on special now. I mean, you could boost that too, but I think it's more value in really sharing the things that are going to get people to feel confident in you and get them curious about what you're doing. But yes, that's one place you might need to do it, just to get your stuff in front of your own followers. These days, that's kind of what it is. Like, our posts aren't showing to our own people sometimes unless you boost them. So, but be discriminating about it. It doesn't have to be everything. Get people to share and reshare your stuff. Encourage your faculty to reshare your stuff. If you're creating contracts with your faculty, put in requirements about social media posting and putting it in their newsletter and on their website. You can do that. So get the faculty, tag your faculty. Okay, personal story. Okay, I work for an amazing company. I love them. I run my own online teacher training through them. Love them, love them, love them. They will put posts of me out there and then not tag me. Missing a total opportunity for me to reshare that post with all of my people. It's just because they're busy and they're stressed and they got so much going on. But tag your faculty in your post. Get them to like, because they're excited about it too. They get to be faculty. That's like a really nice thing. So make sure you tag them all so that they can repost things. Social media is a whole thing, you guys. Those are some starting tips. And again, I recommend focusing locally. Deal with your community. Again, you don't have to compete with the whole world. If you are going to pay to play, move cautiously and test the waters. Like, if you're going to do Google ads or something like that, start with like $40, test it, and then have a way to see whether or not it's working. This is one of the things I still frankly struggle with, is how do I figure out if what I've paid for has actually gotten me anything back from it? Like, do I have more clicks on these links? Do I have more traffic to my site? Start, if you're not a marketing kind of person like that, find someone who is. I bet there's someone in your community who knows this, who might be willing to share an hour or two of their time to help you set up these metrics so you can actually tell if your marketing is working. Don't throw money out there just to throw it out there. We have to be really strategic and start slowly. All right. And this, of course, quality. That's actually a picture from my old teacher training in Vancouver. And so quality is the most important thing. You need to know what your training is about. You need to know what your students are going to learn, the experience that they're going to have, the curriculum that you're going to cover, the books they're going to read. And the more you know about that and have a really high quality training that you can speak to, and the more you can communicate about its vision, its methodology, and what they're going to experience, how they are going to be transformed, the more that plays right into your marketing. And it's authentic and genuine and exciting all at the same time. All right. So before we go to Q&A and all that good stuff, of course, I've drawn you all in here to talk about me. And so many of you know me and have worked with me, but just in case you don't, my deal is I help people actually with the curriculum and the programming of their curriculum. So I do lots of things. I work with people to coach them into how to create it from an instructional design perspective, so you're working efficiently. And I have some programs that if you're at the beginning or if you're revamping, you might be interested in checking out. So I have a create your training, which is like grounds up, how to create it. I also have how to create an online course. So if you're creating online curriculum or want to take part of your teacher training online, let's do that really, really well. Let's make it super solid and awesome. And there are ways to do that strategically. And then also for people who are looking to get help in the actual bulk of their training through either getting a student manual or getting a whole 200-hour training that they can adapt, I do that too. I also have plug and play modules, anatomy for 200-hour, anatomy with my love and partner, Gil Headley, who some of you may know as this amazing anatomy guy. we've created, like, it's longer than expected, folks. It's like 45 hours long, but it's perfect for a 300-hour. So an online anatomy program with him, which is just awesome. And then philosophy modules. So, and lesson plans and everything. You can make an appointment with me and you do not have to buy anything from me. I promise you, if you just want to check it out, you're like, I need some advice, I need some help, or I just want to run this by you, you can make an appointment with me. Just click that big old chat button. If you don't see a time that works for you, email me. I love to connect with you guys. I consider you my community, and I love to help you out and hear what you're doing. So all of that said, now my second favorite thing, coffee and Q&A. So questions that have come up, questions that have not been properly answered. I want to hear from you. You can either raise your hand. Let's just, as a webinar kind of format, raise your hand or put it in the chats. And yeah, what's on your mind?
So can I speak here? Okay. I went through, I got the whole teacher training manual, the whole 200-hour. The first question is once you send us that and kind of unlock the manual, is that all of the information it's in there? Like, even if I had previously gotten lessons from you in the past, like what you send is like the whole 200-hour?
So what
package?
Coco's asking about is, I think, is my BIA training product,
Yeah,
which is,
yeah.
And she knows about this because she was also a teacher trainer with me in Vancouver. So she's very familiar with my methodology. And what I would counsel, just to make this more broad for everybody, if you're considering purchasing curricula from anybody, vet it and make sure that the teaching methodology aligns with your vision for your training. So it's super important. All training, like, there are some really great trainings out there. I'm sure you could, purchase as a foundation. Things that are important to ask are, can I change it? Can I adapt it? Can I edit it? You're going to want to, in my opinion, again, you want to make it yours. But also, does the teaching methodology, the sequencing, queuing, all of that, does that align with my vision and the way that I want to see my teachers teach? Now, Coco, just to answer your question, yes. And we can go over this personally because this might just be a you and me question.
Okay.
But when you buy mine, you get everything. You get the student manual, but you also get all of the training notes. But I will put that together in a schedule for you, so you're not just looking through a bunch of folders, because that's hard, because there's a lot of notes, a lot of lessons.
I was just wondering, like, okay, well, maybe these are questions in our one-on-one coaching then, but
I think they might be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the registering with Yoga Alliance and all that process, can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what's especially if we're working with you, like, do you have somehow a way to support that? And what's the length of time, and what's the likelihood of it just being like honky-dory and bam, and it's done? Because if you're marketing that you have a Yoga Alliance 200-hour, but you don't really have it yet, like, you don't want to disappoint, right? And lead people on.
Definitely not. So when you guys are marketing your trainings, even if you haven't registered, I'm going to say Yoga Alliance, but that can be a stand-in for your registration body if you're not, using them. There's other registration bodies out there too. But you can register it as registration pending. I wouldn't do not register it as approved before it is, because they will get mad. They will be angry about that. But application pending or something like that is totally fine. I'll speak to Yoga Alliance because they're the ones that I know. Right now, the wait time is probably 2 months, maybe 3, to get registered. If you're working with my training, some of you are, then it's faster, because we get you all applied, and then I send your information to my contact at Yoga Alliance, and I say they're using my program with these changes, because you will make some changes, maybe some adjustments with these changes. And that way they can fast track you because they know the program so well and they know me. So, but if you're doing it on your own, it's going to go through a little bit more rigorous process because it hasn't been vetted yet. So what usually happens in Yoga Alliance, just so no one is scared, and I have a free course for all of you, whether you're using my program or not, called How to Register for Yoga Alliance. This is only if you're new. And also, let me mention, for people out there who already have schools, you do not need to up level. Okay, it says that on their site. It says up level. You have to up level by December 31st. I talk to them and actually, no, don't, because they're going to change that. They're actually going to implement a new
Oh,
application process that everyone's going to have to go through. So they're going to scrap the need to up level by the end of the year. So just hang tight on that. Don't go through the pain of up leveling if you don't have to. And if you're a new registration person, there's a course on my site. It's free. How to register, how to up level for Yoga Alliance, and you can follow along there, kind of step by step on how to do it. But once you submit your application to them, they will write you back with edits. Always. I've never had an application, even my curriculum going through many times, they always reply back with an incredibly scary email that's very long and seems really intimidating and like all these things are wrong. Do not panic. That is part of the process. So once that happens, decipher it, reach out to me for a 15-minute chat. I'll help you understand it. And then from there, it's probably usually another month to make whatever changes or so. So you want to plan, I would plan on 3 months. They're just busy. That's kind of the stuff that happens. But Coco, let's hold other Yoga
okay.
Alliance questions for you and me, because I think that's more something
Okay.
we can just cover. I want this to
Okay.
be, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Brittany, yes, we are an old model of 18 teacher training days. So we fit in 6 months of 24 days. Yeah, six months. I would do it with 6 months. It gets a little longer than that. It feels a little long. So alternating weekends, you might have to double up some weekends. You might add an alternate Wednesday night. You could do, some people do like a weekend per month. If you're doing a weekend, like a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, that's like a 20-hour week. Just think that's 10 sessions, so every other week, I guess, would be, I don't do math, a few months, or every other week you could do that. And then guys, take advantage of the opportunity to offline. So if you are doing a teacher training where we are doing just one weekend a month, I think doing like a weekly meeting is a really nice way to keep people in touch just on Zoom. Again, there's so much material you can cover like this. Now that you don't need the classroom for, like philosophy, hey, maybe that's a Zoom thing. Anyways, so that can be nice to keep connected with people even when your weekends are less frequent, and to offset your classroom time so you don't have to have as many hours in person in the schedule. So that's real helpful. Oh yeah. Brittany, let's talk about that one-on-one. Let's you and I have a chat about that. It's a good question. For summer with high school, what do you mean, Kathy? Flesh that question out for me a little bit.
If I were to do just the summer, like, do you think it's possible to do summertime for like just to get them done with YTT in the summer?
Sure. The summer is an ideal time to do an intensive. So for some reason, the two most popular formats I've ever used have been fall and spring weekends, some about it, and then summer, like a month. Summer intensives work really well, because in the summer it's like people are off on vacations, but they can take their July or their
That's
August.
What I was thinking, like July for like high school students wouldn't be like too bad. So
yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, other questions? Yes, Grace.
Yeah, I think this is more of a comment, because I had the question before you mentioned it. I think that what I've been doing probably incorrectly on social media is marketing the teacher. And that just hasn't really been doing it. And just the idea of giving quick tips and having a link there for the training. Hey, you can learn more about this. And something else that you talked about, I've had a lot of people asking, well, I don't think I can teach, but that's everybody says, oh, I don't really want to teach. I want to learn more about yoga. And then they end up going that teaching, 95% or more end up doing that teaching path. Right. So, little things like saying things that people most fear or misconceptions about yoga teacher training, and those little tips like that. I think that's fabulous, and that's what I was hoping to do. I'm like, what am I doing wrong with social media? I'm putting out the time. I'm doing little lives. I talked about why our teacher training is different, because in Atlanta, it's tough. It's like people might love our teacher training or love us as teachers, but our traffic situation is so bad here, they'll tend to go to wherever it's closer and then call me and my partner and ask if we could mentor them because they don't feel ready to teach.
Right. Ah, the irony. Yeah, this is actually a common problem with 200 hours that I do want to mention. Because Yoga Alliance is so heavy on techniques, training, and practice in the 200 hour, if you've signed up with them, they need more practice teaching time. So Yoga Alliance, it's like when you have a 200 hour, they're really focusing on people becoming better yogis personally. And they've set the system up. So that's the focus, not their actual teaching skills. So if we can do both, ideally, but yeah. And also one thing you might consider, Grace, too, is, obviously, ideally, we prefer people to come to your teacher training, but you might also consider having mentorship programs kind of formalized where it's like bridge the gap from your training to your teaching, because so many people feel ill-equipped to teach, maybe because their teacher training didn't give them enough practical experience. And that has to do with the quality of the training. This is the visiting cat. She's very cute.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to do that, because we've had three people actually retake teacher training with us. So they're doing 200 all over again because they just didn't feel like they can do it. They didn't, not even, it's just the sequencing, which we really hit from day one, but it was the speaking in public, which is always a big deal for people. I've had people go, yeah, I've graduated from this program. I'm terrified to speak in public.
Yeah. Well, that's part of your USP, that's part of you. Like, we will help you have the confidence to feel like you can do this safely, experience from day one, really understand the art and craft of sequencing a yoga class, like practical experience. So I think that's really great information for what sets you guys apart.
Thank you.
And the problem is that students don't know better, like, honestly, like they don't know that they're going into a training that's not going to teach them actually how to teach. It's like, it's a marketing thing. They don't know that they have such a good time and they're so excited about their training. They don't always realize that they're not getting the skills they need to actually be a teacher. So we just got to do the best we can and create really good trainings.
Something I might share that I found really useful for our graduates, though, is we have them public speaking from day one. So like, we don't care if you don't know how to talk someone into a pose, read it from the manual just to find their voice, so they find their cadence. And so when they're literally reading it out loud from day one, by the time they've graduated, they've already done so many hours of public speaking, and it helps build confidence.
That's awesome. Yeah, that might be, that's a good fear and thing to address. What if I hate public speaking? It's like, yeah. Good. Other
Rachel,
questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are any considerations that you would make when bringing on an assistant in a 200 hour.
Considerations, how?
I'll give you a little context for it. So I have my own YTT that I'm lead trainer of, and there's someone that would like to assist in the training. So essentially volunteer their time. She's a 500-hour teacher, but she's not super experienced. So she's looking to step into that role of, being part of a teacher training, but she hasn't done it before. I've never had an assistant before. So what would I ask of my assistant?
Having an assistant's great. And the first thing is, does she have the temperament to assist the training? So those qualities, if you're like, what, she's keen, she's mature, she's a hard worker, she clearly wants to improve her skills, great. So, and if she, and I think we used to have, where I was, we used to have an apprenticeship program. And I think these are things that are going to become more popular. Whereas in order to teach this teacher training, you have to know it. And so what you're learning as an assistant is twofold. You're learning about the curriculum itself. Actually, it's threefold. You're learning about curriculum, so you're learning content, Like, if you're training your trainers to understand anatomy and they're getting that content. 2, you're training them how to deliver. So what you want to get clear about, Alex, too, is teaching is facilitation skills. Like, what do you do? And you probably do a lot of it intuitively, but there might be some things you could point out, like facilitation skills, like, okay, at the beginning of the day, I hold space for people where we are checking in and I get them grounded. Or at the beginning of every lesson plan, I talk about like, okay, now we're going to move into this. At the end of every lesson plan, I say, now we've covered this. At the end of every lesson, I have a way of assessing whether or not the students have gotten the information. So they're learning they're learning facilitation skills, like about that, like how to hold the space. And they're learning how to manage like an emotional training space. So what I would do with my trainers is I would, pull them aside and I'd say something like, okay, in this next section, this is what we're going to look on. I want you to watch me because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to describe the thing we're doing. I'm going to demonstrate the thing we're doing. I'm going to demonstrate what not to do. I'm going to tell a personal story to make it funny and get them engaged. And then I'm going to have them do it. And then we're going to let them do it for a while by themselves so they're not scared. And then we're going to walk around the room and give personalized feedback. But it's going to be simple feedback, nothing too complex because it's early in the training, right? So you're giving them the insight into what the training experience is. And then if you're going to enlist in her to go give feedback to students, for example, say they're working on cueing and you're like, okay, we're going to walk around and we're going to listen to the students and give them personalized feedback, give her guidance on what kind of feedback to offer. When you are a young teacher trainer, you want to give feedback on everything. You're like, Mark, okay, your body posture, you're a little hunched and feel a little scared. I want you to be open. I want you to use direct language. Notice that you use the word a lot. So let's try to pull that out. And let's not try to upward inflect, let's downward inflect. So it sounds more certain and confident. And Mark is like having a nervous breakdown. So you want to just say, hey, Mark, just try to open your chest when you speak. That's it. Right. So you might have to coach her on how to give appropriate feedback for your students and what you're looking for in a given moment. Also, what you'll do is when weird stuff comes up and you guys all know this, you have that student who always talks, who will not stop talking, who wants to contribute to everything because she processes things perfectly, right? You're going to be like, okay, this is how we're going to manage this student, right? Or this is how I set up this framework to help contain this. So you can point out those things to her as you go. That's how I would say. Now, for you, it actually makes your job harder, Alex, in some ways, because it's harder and it's harder and easier. 1, you get 2 sets of eyes, but 2, you actually have to train her how to see. So good question. I haven't answered that kind of question in a while. That's fun. All right. Anything else? The floor is open. If you have to go, please don't hesitate. I know we're almost 15 minutes over the hour mark. But I'm happy to hang out and answer more questions if there are things on your mind. Yes, Katrin. Katrin?
Yes, that's correct. Hi. I was wondering, you mentioned that you're not really want to talk about intensive training specifically, but I'm wondering because, for whatever reason, I'm only thinking about doing intensive trainings in the future. And I'm just curious about your opinion about it. Like, from your point of view, what are the pros and cons?
So by intensive, do you mean like 24 days straight as opposed to
something like that? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like 3-4 weeks.
Those can be great. Yeah. Actually, I'm not opposed to intensive trainings at all. I think they're great, particularly they tend to work, depends on your community. They tend to work good in the summertime. Pros and cons. Okay. One con, you'll probably give your students free yoga for the duration of the training. So if it's a longer training, you're giving them free yoga for longer. That's just something to consider. The pros of having a long form training is that both the trainers and the students have more time to integrate. If you're teaching, like if people buy my curriculum, I always recommend that they run it as a long form first, because as a trainer, you're also preparing every single weekend, every single day. So the longer form can be an easier way to start. But if you've been running it a while and know the curriculum, then that's not really a factor. The long form is good for students who want to take their time with things more, or maybe need to integrate things a little bit more slowly. But intensive has its own kind of energy. It really does build on itself in a way that can be very effective. I don't notice any difference in the quality of teaching. Both turn out great teachers. So no downside there. I will say if you're running an intensive, be cautious about homework. I would try not to give homework so much or make it very minimal if you're running an intensive because it's too much. Also, if like I have a 24-day intensive, I like to run 8 days on, 2 days off, 8 days on, 2 days off, 8 days on, so that there's a break in there. Full straight on is pretty tough. Oh,
So,
one more piece of advice, actually, as a facilitator, especially in an intensive, make the students do more and you do less.
Okay. How?
Teach them something and then make them do it. So, because as teachers, we can tend to lecture sometimes and need to hold space. The more you can say, what do I need the student to do as a result of this lesson? And then focus on making them do it. When you're talking about philosophy, something like that, if you're giving an idea out, then open the floor and have them talk about it. Put it into groups so they talk about it. So as much as possible, we want to move, when we can't always, but when possible, move out of lecture and into them understanding and workshopping and creating, because ultimately they're going to have to stand up and teach. They have to do it. So the more you can get them doing that from the beginning, the better.
Yeah, that appeals to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for answering my questions.
Of course, that's a good question. All right, everybody. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to email them to me or anything else that might be burning. And of course, you can always set up a chat with me. I always love to hear from you. But thank you for coming today. Thanks for your faces. It's nice to see you guys. And have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your weekend.